exactly.
What are you doing?
What's going on? Chloe, this is discriminating AISL. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I've invited three of my friends to talk about their experiences in doing the new IB math curriculum. And so, here they are!
Hello, my name is Andy. I took IB Maths Analysis and Approaches higher level. I applied to schools in the UK. Majors include mathematics and statistics as well as chemistry with mathematics.
Okay, so my name is Cindy. I took analysis and approaches at an SL level, and I applied to multiple countries including the UK, Singapore, Hong Kong, and China. And so the major I applied to was biomedical sciences.
Hi, my name is Sunny Kwan, and I took the IB Math Applications and Interpretations higher level course, and I applied to schools in Korea, and I particularly applied to the media and communications major.
Hi, I'm Chloe Chang. I took IB Math AISL. I applied to US and Canada, and I'm a econ business major.
I decided on choosing this in particular because I know I'm doing a math science-based subject. So even though a lot of universities say AISL is acceptable, but I chose this course just in case because a lot of people do equate AISL to math studies. And then I changed my course. Actually, I was originally in AISL, but then I changed to ASL because somewhere in October 2019, a lot of the university requirements changed because they're not sure about the level of the courses. So they started changing, and I thought that choosing ASL would be a more conservative approach to get me into the major and the universities I want to go to. So yeah, that's basically it.
I picked analysis and approaches higher level because after 10th grade, I really wanted to do something with math because that was one of math and science were my two favorite courses. So I ended up picking chemistry and math, and that's how I ended up with both chemistry and math at higher level. And the decision I picked, the decision I made between analysis and approaches and application and interpretations was, I think it was honestly because the course was still pretty new. I heard that both higher levels you have the option to pick different schools, but I think some math courses required analysis and approaches higher level, and also most of my friends were doing this course, so that's how I ended up.
So for AIHL, for Koreans who have learned math in Korea and were trained with Korean math education, a lot of people usually recommend taking the AA course, especially HL, because Korean math puts great focus on advanced calculations and pure mathematical problem solving, as well as topics like calculus. And so that's what AA focuses more on. And on the other hand, AI focuses more on the practical application of math, like graph theory or statistics. But for me, having been in international school for a long time, rather than solving tons of workbooks like what most Koreans do when they train math, I learned math in a more interactive, creative, and applying-based manner. And that involved a lot of hands-on projects. And I found that part of math particularly intriguing for me. And plus, I found myself strong with units like stat and probability rather than calculus or vector. And so this all together led me to choose the AI course instead of AA. And I didn't have any particular university requirements either.
I think personally for me, I felt at least for our school, the double science, natural science kids all took AA. And for my class, it was all art students or double social science students. So since I was a double social science student, I felt like I wouldn't really need math. And I know that a lot of universities, at least for econ, require you to take a higher math level than AISL, but I didn't really think that was a problem for me applying to the US and applying to the econ majors that I So that's why I picked AI.
But what about Canada? Because I heard from Miss Rooney that Canada, like a lot of Canadian like universities require AA. Like they prefer AA in general over AI.
Yeah.
So
I believe for UBC they required a higher math for econ, but I think it was that school that like they had a more like quantitative econ or like a more like social science focus. Like there were two sides, so I'm pretty sure I applied to the one with like less math, so it wasn't a problem either way.
and also like a question for Sunny because I know like for your course, even though there might be like less vectors and probability, there's still like those two.
It's kind of like focused on probability and statistics, but we do touch on vectors, but it's not like as deep as I think AAHL does.
Okay.
And a lot of problems we can use our calculator, so it's like mostly like being able to apply the concepts and being able to use the formula rather than having to solve like all the things by hand.
Okay. So for ASL, like all the teachers told me that it's like most similar to the old SL course. And so I think the only difference is that we need to learn how to do proofs, but it's like very easy. It's just like left hand side goes to right hand side. That was basically it. And then the other difference is that like we don't have to do vectors. The old SL course had to do vectors, but we didn't have to do any. So that's so good because vectors is a pretty hard like topic, but both new SL courses don't have to do vectors at all. And then so for preparation for like test, all the students in my like course, we just used the old math SL like past papers and we were doing fine. So yeah.
For my course, I heard that it's pretty similar to the past maths higher level, and for revision and stuff, I used Revision Village. I also used, I guess past papers from maths HL, and then there were also some new specimen papers, but I feel like the specimen papers were really easy, a little too easy compared to like the other practice I've had.
Oh yeah, I have a question for Andy. I just remember. Did you find like the new curriculum? Do you think it's harder than the old like HL course? Because I heard from Mr. Bywater and Mr. Myers that like the AHL course is actually harder than the old HL course. But I don't know if that's like valid. Yeah.
I don't know much about the old course, but I think like I'm pretty sure. Well, actually, I'm not that sure because I don't know about the old course. But from what you're saying, it sounds like, like the content you learn is going to be a little harder. But I feel like this year's test at least wasn't as hard as I expected. But like in the future, they'll probably up the difficulty because this is only like the first test. So I'm expecting it's probably going to be harder.
And were there some topics that were covered in your course but not in the old HL course, like especially like when you were doing like past papers? Like, did you notice any?
No, I could just about do every question in the old math higher level, but there's probably like some things where we're learning that they didn't learn. But yeah.
A lot of people compare AIHL to the old HL course, but I would say that those two courses are very, very different. Well, I would say like it includes part of the old HL course plus some content from the previous options, including things from discrete math like graph theory and from further statistics and probability like hypothesis testing, plus a lot of new content that even our teachers had to learn at university level, like eigenvalues, eigenvectors, second-order differential equations, phase portraits, or like diagonalization of matrices. And so all of that is like new content that wasn't introduced in IB courses before. And so because of that, it's very hard to find resources for AIHL course. And for old HL paper, although we can solve some questions, I found that a lot of questions in the old HL paper, past papers, were unsolvable for AI example, we would have to use calculators when the old HL course didn't, and so the mark schemes are different and all of that. So there were some problems with using the old HL past papers, and so I would say that this is like a very, very new course that lacks a lot of resources.
For me, a lot of people compare AISL to math studies, but I heard from like a lot of people that it's slightly more rigorous, and I felt like for in past years for math studies, like a lot of universities didn't accept that as a math. But however, for AISL, maybe because it's a new course, I felt like that wasn't really an issue. So I'd say, like, at least for me, if we still stuck to the old curriculum, I would have taken IB Math SL. However, with the new curriculum, I felt like AISL was still a really good fit.
For us, like for my course, I think everything went pretty smoothly because like we had 2 math teachers in total, and both of them are like pretty experienced. And then we had no problems in revision because we had so many like resources that was like previously from the old Math SL course, so we had no problem with like studying, like even self-studying and like revision. I think like the only difficulty was like the Math IA, because I find the Math IA like pretty challenging and difficult. And but I'm not like so far until now like we don't know if they grade the old Math IA and the new Math IA differently, because I can imagine all the teachers like use the old standards, but then I don't know if the examiners would like grade them differently because it's a new course. And I don't know if there's like different requirements for like different levels, because now it's like very ambiguous and all the samples that we've had are from the old curriculum. So overall there's like not much difficulties, yeah.
For my course, difficulties I've encountered, there haven't been that many. It's kind of like Cindy said, because we were in the same class. Our teachers were pretty experienced. It was pretty good. We finished our course pretty early, so we had a lot of revision time. But I think, I guess it's kind of my own thing, but like one thing that like I noticed that I didn't really like kind of focus on was like how to properly use my calculator. So like, because I did this during like one of my unit exam tests, but like I prepared like for the actual IB exams. Like for the for one of my unit tests, I couldn't figure out like where certain things were, and it took me a long time to like actually find out like how to properly use my calculator, and that kind of just like slowed me down during the test. But after that one test, I like figured everything out, and then I was just ready for. I just knew how to use my calculator for the final exam.
Yeah, actually, to add on to Andy, I just noticed like one difficulty I encountered was like paper 1, which is the non-calculator paper, because I feel like because I have a very like weak mathematical like base like knowledge. So in my actual exam, I actually had difficulties like simplifying, and it's like basic algebra, but I had trouble simplifying things, so I didn't get to like the final answer for one of the questions. So I know my weakness is in paper 1, which is the non-calculator paper, while like the AI people, they have calculators like throughout all their papers. So that's something I didn't take into consideration of when I was choosing the course, but I came to find out that my strength is in like paper 2, like the calculator paper, and I often had trouble in non-calculator like paper 1.
And do you feel like for for people who are considering taking AA courses, you would recommend them to be trained with like mental math and being strong with mental math?
To be honest, I don't think. Well, I mean, what do you think, Andy?
Mental math, because I mean you have to show all your work. Right?
Yeah.
So like, you just write it out as you like think about it, and then you'll get full marks. Because if you just do mental math and if you forget to like write something down, you might lose marks for it.
Yeah.
Even if you get the right answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes like mental math is like maybe not as good in terms of like getting the marks, because like if you look at the mark scheme, they have like M1 and M2. Those are like method marks. So if the like examiner sees like you use a particular method, even though like the numbering, like the values might be wrong, they can still give you the mark. But if you only do mental math and you didn't write that down, they can't give you the method mark. And for some mark scheme, they would say like, oh, if you see final answer, you directly give like the full mark. But then sometimes, especially for paper 1, if you do like all mental math, like it's not like it's impossible to get the right answer, but it's like the probability of you making mistakes like increases. So if you like get the final answer wrong, like directly, like it can only be a 0 if you don't write any method mark like down. They can't give you any method marks. So yeah, but I guess like mental math definitely helps you in terms of like doing math faster in like the paper 1 side of AA, but then you still have to like write it down. So yeah.
In terms of difficulties that I encountered for an AI HL course, as I said before, the number 1 difficulty is the lack of resources because it's a very new course. And second of all, because it's a new content, there's a lot of new content. Even the teachers sometimes don't know the answer to my questions. And a lot of teachers had to learn the content as they taught us. And so I had many questions that was left unanswered, and I had to search for my own answers. And because, again, it's a new course, it's very hard to estimate or predict what type of questions and in what forms of questions there will be. And it's also hard to predict the extent to which a specific content will be asked. And so I think that's some challenges that I faced while studying this course.
For me, I think the challenges we all faced were actually very similar since like this is like we're the newest cohort to do this math. So like the lack of past papers for the course I picked specifically. I think the main thing was like again the method marks thing. For AISL, our teacher like emphasized really hard like to, even though we use calculators for a lot of our math, he emphasized to still write down what we inputted into our calculator, and that was one point that a lot of us like forgot about, which led us to lose a lot of marks in like unit tests and stuff. So that was something we had to like remember or keep in mind for the IB finals.
So for me, like I said, it was just like doing all the past papers because like what I found was that like there's always like reoccurring question types for math tests especially. So if you've done this type of question before, when you encounter the same type of question, you can like solve it immediately without thinking because you've implemented that method or that approach so many times. And that worked for like our first exam, which took place on May 2021. So any resources, there's so many resources out there. So like Revision Village has like, since they changed the like course, they made like question banks for each of the new course. And then I would say like all the ASL like paper like question bank questions came from the old Math SL questions. And some other textbooks. Our school used the Oxford textbook, but then we found that there's a lot of mistakes. And then the question types on the Oxford textbook didn't show up on exams. So even though we did it for like homework and everything, I didn't rely on it as much like for reviewing for the actual exam. And another resource I found helpful was the Hayes. Yeah, the Hayes and Harris. Yeah, that one. I think they also made textbook for like the new curriculum.
Oh.
Yeah, I found the ones for like AASL and AAHL. So I used both the ones for AASL and the old Math SL course. And again, the questions are pretty similar. Some of the questions are like reoccurring, like they just moved it, like, and they had a different title page. But yeah, that's it.
For me, review, like, I would look through like the Oxford textbook, but like I wouldn't look at the questions so much for practice. Like questions I practice on either past papers for Math HL or Revision Village, but I would review like the textbook for like the concepts and like the key ideas because like they have like at the end of each unit they have like a checklist of like important things, but throughout each chapter there's also like specific like boxes with important pieces of information. I'd always just make sure to like read over those and make sure I remember those, and then I would practice questions on like Revision Village or past papers.
For AIHL, what I found most helpful was the specimen paper, which is basically the only thing I have from IB. And so for me, I solved the specimen paper, all 3 papers at least 3 times before I took the exams. And now you guys have the past paper from our exams, but for us, because we didn't have any past papers, we could only use past papers from the previous courses. But as I said before, the old HL paper is quite unsuitable for the AI HL course because of the different requirements like calculator use, and so that wasn't really the best resource. But again, that was like almost the only thing we had. So some of the questions I still found helpful, and so you can still try solving them, and check the mark schemes to make sure that you can solve the questions that you're supposed to be able to solve, and you can skip the questions that you think you didn't learn. And so I would still recommend going over the old HL course past papers. And other sources that I used include the Oxford textbook again, as Cindy and Andy said. And also I realized that there were like 3 papers at the back of the Oxford textbook, paper 1, 2, 3, and that was quite helpful too. And I also realized that in the online version of the textbook, for every unit there's 2 hyperlinks that leads to further questions for each unit. And so sometimes I found a lot of questions from that resource having wrong answers, but that's some additional sources, additional questions that you can find if you need more questions. And besides that, I also use InThinking and Columnity as backup resource in case you want and need more questions to solve. Yeah.
For me, it was basically the same as like what Sunny said. We used Revision Village a lot. My class used Revision Village a lot, and the main other thing was like for textbooks. Like for example, if we had like homework, whenever I encountered a problem I got wrong or like didn't know what to do, I would like write it down, write the question like unit down, put it on a sticky note and stuff. So like at the very end, I was able to just go back to all those questions that I found difficult really easily, and that really helped me prepare for exams.
So for our May 2021 exams, for my course particularly, I would just say that everything is within expectation. It was not too difficult or not too easy, but it was definitely easier than our mock exams, which came from InThinking. And then, so overall, I think the topics that they tested on was pretty balanced as well. Like for both of like AASL and AAHL, after we came out of paper 1 exam, we noticed that like there weren't any probability questions. And so our teacher advised us to like study a lot on probability because it might come up, there's a very high chance that it will come out on paper 2 because our teacher said it often like complements each other, and that is the case. So so I think the topics that they tested on was pretty well-rounded. Like there were proof questions, there were like binomial theorem questions, there were probability, calculus, like they almost touched on everything. And so I guess like if you just like study with the old math SL curriculum, you'll be fine.
For math, higher level analysis and approaches, I found the test, I think it was easier than expected, probably because like this year it's the first year and also like COVID and everything. But between the 3 papers, I found paper 2 the hardest, I found paper 1 and 3 easiest, and I think that's because like during the mock exams I did good on paper 2, so I didn't study for as much. But I think like a piece of advice would be to like even if you like do good on like a certain part during like your mock exam, still like study for the entirety and just like study for the final exam as if you didn't study for your mocks.
Oh yeah.
Thinking on
For AIHL, similar to what Cindy and Andy said, ours also wasn't as difficult as we thought. The level was very similar to the specimen paper, and the question form and content was also very similar to the specimen paper. And because we thought that it would be harder than the specimen paper, as it usually is, we thought it would be harder than what we got, but that wasn't the case. And so I would say for future IB students, I would recommend that you look at both the specimen paper and our paper from May 2021.
For us, the specimen paper was like extremely easy. Like that was pretty much unanimously like agreed upon for our class. But then our mocks were extremely. It wasn't extremely hard. It was like harder than what we expected, and it was from InThinking as well. So like a lot of us were really worried going into the exams, and we weren't really sure what the level of difficulty was because like the difference between the in-thinking papers and the specimen papers, there was like a huge gap in difficulty. So we weren't exactly sure, but I would say like if there was a scale of like easiest to hardest, and if like easiest was the specimen and hardest, let's say, was the in thinking, I would say the IB exams would fall somewhere in between, but like much closer to the specimen paper level. Paper one I think was pretty easy for all of us this year. A lot of us finished before time was up, so there was a lot of time to go back and double check. But paper two I felt like was slightly harder than paper one, and a lot of students faced difficulties with like time management. So like towards the end of like the IB exam test time, a lot of students ran out of time, therefore they couldn't solve all the problems, or they couldn't solve like parts of the problems at the end. So yeah, that was how it went. Overall, I think the two papers were not that hard.
For you guys?
Paper 3, the investigation. I think this one was a little harder to study for, but in the end, I didn't think the paper 3 was as hard as I thought it was going to be. Revision Village didn't have any paper 3 practice, so the only practice I had for it was really just past math higher level paper 3s, and that, yeah, I guess that really kind of worked out for me, and I think that was fine for this year. But like for you guys, now have like one past paper from this year to study, so I guess it's a little better for you guys in the future.
For AI paper 3, I feel like there's like limited topics that can come out in paper 3, and that includes differential equations like phase portraits, which was also in the specimen paper. Statistics, I think that's almost certainly going to be in paper 3, and graph theory. I think those three are the most likely to come up in paper 3, and so I would recommend that you review these topics before you take paper 3. And also, I think paper 3, for paper 3 specifically, time management is very, very important because you only have 60 minutes to solve 2 questions, which is each like 30 marks. So it's very important that you continue solving, even if you can't solve a particular question. You need to skip forward and continue to solve the next question because you won't have enough time. Yeah. And for me, because the mock paper 3 was very, very hard, I was very, very nervous for paper 3 exams particularly, but it wasn't that hard. I was very thankful, and comparatively, I think paper 1 and 2 was much easier than paper 3. Like when I was solving paper 1, I skipped back in the middle of the exams to check that it was HL paper, not the SL paper. It was that easy, yeah. And so I think compared to paper 1 and 2, paper 3 requires a little bit more work and effort. And yeah, that's my tip for paper 3.
And another thing to add was for our May 2021 exams, I think the main 2 areas that like most students struggle with were calculus and probability, but probability didn't show up for paper 1 for us. So we were really surprised, but then like since paper 2 was the next day, a lot of the students then studied for probability thinking that it was going to come up, in which it did. So that was one thing that was special, I guess, about our
Did like new topics like Bornmoy diagrams come up? Because that's a new topic, like compared to the old.
Right. I don't think there was a question like that. If there was, it was like really, like it was like half complete. You just like drew 2 more lines.
Oh,
But
okay.
I don't think it came up. I don't think so. But yeah, and I know a lot of people were like asking what the difference was between like AISL paper 1 and 2, and since like we didn't have a paper 3 either because it's SL, and also we were allowed calculators for both papers. I feel like there wasn't much of a difference other than the fact that like there were less questions overall, and each question was like expanded on more, so like there were more parts under each question. and the difficulty is slightly harder, but overall it's not that different.
Yeah. Oh, and I remember something for our May 2021 exam. One question in our paper that shocked us was like, which sampling can be used to solve the limitation of the original sampling used, like sample used. So it was asking about like what types of like random sampling, convenience sampling, like quota sampling, and I freaked out because but we didn't have one before. Like it never came out in like the old math SL like papers ever.
Do you guys study it?
We didn't we briefly talked about it in class, but that was it. So I just like randomly I think I put out quota sampling or something, and I just moved on. It was like 1 or 2 marks only. But then I was surprised because I've never seen a question like that.
We had a question like that too, but then like our class focused on it for a while.
That's so true.
Even in the specimen paper too for us. For
Wait.
example.
Are you guys going to talk about how long it took to finish your course?
Wait. Before that, I also want to say like for paper 3, for us AIHL, we had a lot of questions on validity and validity questions we had to explain how valid a specific claim was, and we have to evaluate like a claim that someone is making and give reasons for that. And so it was like we thought that part wasn't really necessary. And even the teacher said that part will not come out, but then there were like at least 3 questions on that. So I was very surprised.
Wait, those were still math questions? Like evaluating claims?
Yeah, like validity. Like how valid this is.
Oh my god. That's math questions. Dang, okay. Didn't Miss She said like Euler was going to come out? Did it come out?
Euler's method?
Yeah. Because she said it comes out every year in the old curriculum. So I'm like curious if it
We had it.
I don't think so. Honestly, I forgot what the test was.
I think your exams had it because I heard other cohorts from your course talking about it.
Oh, then maybe. I don't remember anything about it.
Okay, cool.
I mean, like, I don't remember anything about my entire test. So.
Okay. So yeah, what are the Okay, so any advice for the underclassmen and future IB students?
Me.
Okay. Yeah, she's starting first.
My number 1 advice for you is please take notes. A lot of people say math doesn't need notes, but like Andy. But I'll tell you, when it becomes 12th grade, you will forget what you learned in 11th grade first semester.
Yes.
So please take notes and review your notes before you take tests.
Personally.
And and please do your homework. Please.
Amen.
Okay, so for me, rather than taking notes for math, I do a lot of practice questions and exercises because I feel like rather than taking notes, that kind of like drills in like the concepts more for me. And kind of like I was saying before, like before exams, I always first will look through the IB textbook that we have and look at the key concepts and make sure I remember each of those, and then I move on to doing like practice questions for review, because then that kind of refreshes my mind, and also like it's not like too much work because you can like breeze through like chapters or units in like a few minutes and then like get all the key concepts down. There should also be like a checklist with the most important things to remember for each unit, and that's why personally I don't take as much notes because like I have those resources, and I also do a lot more practice questions.
I would say like a lot of people say that math just involves you being able to solve problems, but when it comes to exam time, at least like for example, like 3 months before exam time, you don't have time to go through the entire textbook and to go through every single question type. So if you don't have notes that you have prepared for that you personally created for yourself to keep in mind what you always forget or what you always get wrong, then when it comes to exam time, you will find that you won't have enough time to go through everything. And so I think taking notes is the most direct and most guaranteed method that you will achieve high marks in the exams.
I think, but
Right.
like,
Right.
no,
Right.
let because our class finished learning our units really fast. And that's because like some things we skipped over some things that like our teacher like thought we already knew, and we kind of did, and so we just like went through those quickly, and if we had any questions we would ask him. So we went through like our units pretty quick. We finished with like how much, like a month?
For you guys, like for Asia, at least 1 month before
At least
the
1
thing,
month
and for
before the
ESSA
exam.
at least 2 months. Cause like our teacher just skipped over like exponents and logarithm, which is something you should have learned in like 10th grade, 9th grade. So it like for him, like he thought that it wasn't like it was not really like it's not like really necessary for him to like spoon feed us the content on these like topics again, because we've learned that before. And like for me, how I study is a combination of like their two like their like method. So like I do a lot of like questions to get used to question types, but at the same time I take notes of like I take note of the questions. So I have a document where I included all the questions that I couldn't solve before, and I just like redo them like over and over again, making sure that I can solve that question. And if you're worried about like, oh, what if you just memorize the answer? Like, trust me, you won't. There's so many questions out there. It's all numerical numbers. How can you like memorize them? Like, you can only remember like how you approach that question. So like, yeah.
Yeah, and to add on to Cynthia, I also did something similar because I put stickers on the questions that I got wrong. For example, when I used the Oxford textbook, I put stickers on the questions that I got wrong, and then when it came to unit test, before I took the unit test, I would solve the questions that I put stickers on to make sure that I resolved the questions that I got wrong. And so that way, it's almost the same thing as going through the entire textbook twice, because you resolve the questions that you got wrong before. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Sunny. That's what I did for a lot of my tests, and also how I reviewed before finals. Another thing was I had like a separate book where like it was like kind of like a guide just for me. So like I wrote down like, for example, formulas that like weren't in the formula book.
Yeah.
I wrote down stuff like that, and for AI, something I found really important was I also wrote down like steps to certain like calculator like functions. And that was really helpful for me, because before exams, like a lot of classmates came to me to ask me like how to do the calculator functions, because like they forgot, and I just like gave them my book. So that was one thing I found really helpful. And key advice: don't look down on my course. Too many people look down on this course. We're doing our best.
Yeah, it's not math studies. It's like
It's not math studies, guys.
And oh yeah, another like advice is like to start your math I as soon as possible. Like, cause like for AA, like both of us we had the same teacher. He told us to start thinking about like our math I over the summer, and that was so helpful, because like for math I, in my opinion, it's the hardest, because like not only you need to make sure it's something you're interested in, you need to ensure that the level of math can like score you the marks for like criterion E. And that's so important, because it entirely depends on your choice of topic. And so I spent like not the entire summer, but like portions of it like thinking about my math I, and then I actually had to switch topic like in October, because I found out that the initial idea I had wasn't working because of like the lack of data or something. Because like sometimes you might have an idea, oh, that might work, but then you lack the data, because sometimes like a lot of like online, they don't like give out these like raw data that are not processed before. So yeah, and so it really like helped like saved us, because math I was one of the first IAs that we completed, and it really took off like so much stress off our shoulders. While for both of their classes, I think they started only thinking about it in the second year. Yeah, and then I can imagine like how troubling that is, especially like your class.
Yeah,
like
our class started really late. Yeah, and then like we were like told to finish it over winter break, but then like one of us finished it. So like yeah, we started really late, and a lot of people stress over it. And by the time I finished mine and turned my draft in, or like final draft in to my teacher, some students like were still getting their topics like
sorted out.
like approved.
Oh my goodness.
So like yeah, definitely try to start early. Like if you have a teacher that's staying like second year as well, like see if you can contact them over summer for ideas and stuff like that. That would be really helpful.
So, Sunny, I know that your class, until like right up to exams, you guys were still like learning content.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, for our class, one of the biggest mistake I think that our school made was putting the SL and HL AI courses together in one class with one teacher, because our teacher accommodated the class more with the SL course, so we spent a lot of time on the easy content. So we have 15 units total, and we spent the first semester, the entire first semester, just doing the first 3 units, which was the easiest units, and so I think that was a big mistake. And so in the end, we ended up rushing a lot of units in the last semester of 12th grade, and so we ended up spending in the last week of school, which was a week before exam started, we had to start and finish the last unit, which was very, very painful. Yeah, and we also had to do morning classes, additional morning classes every day in the last month of school, and so that was very, very chaotic. So I would recommend that if that happens to you, please study before your school starts that content, because if you just wait for your school or your class to start that content, then you would end up not being able to have enough time to cover all that practice problems and to cover all that additional content. And so so if you think that your class is going to rush at the end, then please study beforehand or get a tutor. Yeah.
This is also because like teachers are like teaching this content for like the first time.
Yeah.
So like maybe like teachers will get better at understanding the content, and then it might not be a problem in the future, but just prepare, because like next year is only like the second year.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers are still getting used to teaching it.
Yeah, and the same thing with Sunny, like we were in the same class, same teacher, first year, and we did spend a lot of time in the first 3 units. So like, I know like a lot of people in my class like needed that, like just like that review, but then like personally, like sometimes I felt like we spent too long on like the easier units, and since like the units kind of progress in difficulty like as you go on. I felt as though like certain units such as like probability and calculus we could have spent more time on as opposed to like the beginning units, but then like because of that, I know like Sunny's class in year 2 we were like split. For Sunny's class they ran out of time at the end, but then for my class we finished very early on, so like our teachers just gave us self-study time in class. So like time wasn't really an issue. Like I feel like there's like more time than needed for my course to study all the information and all like the units. And then we had a lot of review time at the end, and like yeah, I felt like there was like way too much time, so it led me to doing other stuff in class, like other subjects, other homework and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if we got this like in the previous footages, but like the reason why our class, like the AA class, our class never split because we only had like 10 people combined. So my course, like including me, there were only 4 people, and his like only had 6 or 7 people, like around that. Yeah. So our class never split. But the reason we finished so early was that this teacher just decided to skip logarithm and exponents, because he just assumed that because we learned that in previous grades, like 10th grade, there was no need to like spoon feed us the content again. And then we did calculus very early on. So we did calculus actually in the first year, like I think only 2 or 3 months into the first year, we started calculus already. So, and that's the reason why we were able to finish so early. So like my class actually finished at least 2 months before exams, and his class at least 1 month before exams. So what's good about that is that we have plenty of time for review, and like their class, which they have to like cram everything at the end. For some students, like teaching slowly like might be a better like strategy, but for some students, like higher level students, like there's really no need to like go over the basics and like of like simplifying algebra or whatever. So like it really depends on your teacher, but then if you feel like it's not working for you, like make sure just get some help outside of class, because like or else like everything's going to pile up towards the end and it's very like stressful.
Mm-hmm. But then again, like our classes are like 20 people. They had five, so we had like around 15, and like our classes weren't split in year 1, which may have caused the issue with time. But like if your schools like have bigger classes, bigger cohorts with like a teacher specific for each course, I feel like that might not be that big of an issue, but still like it depends on your situation.
So that's the end of the video. We hope you guys found it useful.
You know what to do. Like and subscribe.
And turn the bell on.
If you guys have comments or any questions, you can ask them in the comments section. Probably Cindy will get back to you, but if you have any like specific like between course questions, we can also like get back to you, I guess.
Okay. Thank you for watching.
Subscribe.
Andy's so done. Okay.
Hi!
I love you.
Recently I fell in love with Robert Downey Jr.
Why? Iron Man, right? Iron Man,
Yeah, it's
right?
really hot.
No, I hate Iron Man.
Why?
I hate to the video.
His ego? But his ego is what makes him